Hello, Mudasir. How are you?
Hi, Sai. I'm good. How are you?
I'm well. Thank you so much. It's wonderful to see you, my good friend.
Likewise. Likewise.
I appreciate it. I appreciate it. So, I definitely would love to welcome everyone to the inaugural conversation on Deconstructed with Mudasir and I. And before we dive right in, I would love, Mudasir, for you to introduce yourself to the world.
Yeah. And I'm excited to be part of this deconstructed series here with you, Sai. And I'm looking forward. And a brief introduction about myself is I work as a coach and where I coach and mentor teams and organizations. I collaborate across the levels with my multiple perspectives to understand the business goals and skillfully working with the teams across the geographies to deliver the business outcomes.
Excellent. Excellent. And a little bit about my background. I'm a transformation and change agent, if you will, consultant, coach, etc., other labels. I really love to partner with organizations to help them focus on their business models, their operating models, if you will, and really calibrate, especially those two elements with everything in between for broader impact. At a more deeper level, I love for them to really confront and deal with reality, which a lot of organizations, individuals have trouble with, and not only reality, but human nature, and really their own identity, quite honestly, for integrating those things through awareness and achieving impact in the world. So I love what I do, and I'm sure we'll learn more about each other as we go. Before we
That's
dive in, if you're good, Buddha, I'm going to offer a little bit of background as to how we got here, and then please chime in likewise to add
yeah,
any more
yeah,
detail.
yeah. Please
Excellent,
kick us off. Thanks.
excellent. So as the crisis and the events have unfolded over the past few years, Mudasir and I really began to recognize that the world is going through a bit of a renaissance, and there's a bit of the old, I'll say, paradigms dying and new paradigms being born. So a bit of a shift in the worldview, to say the least. So in saying all that, we really sort of put our heads together and we said, as there is a style of food that is around deconstructed, we said, hey, we really can learn together and learn with the community and from the community about taking some concepts, taking some ideas, deconstructing them, constructing and learning in that journey. I think that's the broad background. Anything to add, Mudasir, kind of to that broad background?
No, you summarize pretty much everything, and yeah, you put it that quite well, Sai. Nothing to add on why deconstruct and why we are here, and yeah, it is the need of the hour in our view.
Excellent, excellent. And then the added emphasis, I would say, is very keenly. Mudasir and I are very much practitioners, so we'll explore, but very, very critically want to focus on practical guidance, practical things that we can do. So by all means, these are not, I'll say, theoretical or philosophical conversations, but extremely practical conversations. Um, so, so without too much more to add, our first topic is critical thinking. And my good friend, I would love for you to kind of share your perspective, and we can begin to dive in.
Yeah. So if we talk about critical thinking or anyone talks about critical thinking, the first question that pops in most of us head is, why is critical thinking? What is it special? Why is it so special that we need to have that? That's the underlying question. Most of us will get that. So I'll start from there. Why is critical thinking is it may be a bit bold and outrageous statement to say that critical thinking is in responsibility of every individual, and the reason I say that is we are humans, and what's different between humans and other life species is the mind and the ability to think that we have, and and that's the most significant asset that we have, and we need to think and understand, deal with the reality and complexities that we face day in day out, and that's my perspective on why critical thinking. How about you, Sai? What do you say
Very,
about that?
very well put. I especially, I think, given the happenings, I'll say, of the recent years, I look at, you use the word responsibility, and I think it's an extremely powerful word. I use the word essential. If we are going to survive, let alone thrive in the world, it's truly essential more than ever to critically think. And I do think, as I have encountered on my journey, many people, I've seen some folks that are just off the charts as critical thinkers, and some
Mhm.
folks that are respectfully far below that. And so there's a variance building, I think, in the world historically and now more than ever.
Well said.
How,
Yeah.
how about, as we kind of go beyond the why, kind of the what and the how, what sort of things come up for you as we think about it that way?
So basically, it's all about awareness, self awareness, and the awareness of your surroundings, as well as how you will integrate with that awareness the information, facts that you have, and constantly analyze and evaluate from multiple perspectives in order to get a win win outcome. So, and this may sound easy to do that, but it's a continuous journey or a continuous thought process, and not necessarily everyone will get this as a easy trait, but it needs a constant and deliberate practice.
Well said. Very well said. And I know we're going to get into deliberate practice downstream as well, even more deeply. So we begin to see the connections already, even from the first conversation between now and where we're headed. Um, I, to add on to kind of what you're thinking, if you will, and your expression of that, I think there's a degree of meaningfulness that is crucial to be able to operate in the world. And to
Absolutely.
your point, if we stay shallow, it's not going to happen. It's not going to happen at all. So if I add on to it, the things that come to my mind of what it is truly and how to achieve it, for me, it begins with deliberate curiosity first, if you will, and very much at that point, then getting into creativity. So as I like to say, curiosity first, then creative, if you will,
Hmm.
with intent and
Right.
impact at the
Hmm.
surface level. Those are the key words that come to my mind. Any other thoughts from your vantage point around the perspective and things as we delve deeper?
Right, right. As pretty much I echo what you said with respect to curiosity and then creativity. Some people will get that, that is a innate stuff, and some people will build that. But to start with, have be curious and asking questions respectfully without yeah, when I say asking questions, you need to challenge the norm. At the same time, you should not go rogue. You need to ask in such a way to understand the rationale or why that is there out, and process that. And then the other way of putting that is never take anything on its face value, and never agree or accept for anything with your mind closed or eyes closed. The reason I say that, and I am deliberately using those words, mind closed and eyes closed, is uh, you end up taking it as a norm. It can be government, it can be an office setup, it can be in an organization, or it can be in a family, right? So you need to understand what we are trying to achieve, accomplish, and then there will be a multiple ways to accomplish that. So that's where the multiple multi-dimensionality and perspectives comes into place. So that's something that's something everyone needs to cultivate, that habit, in order to bring critical thinking into practice.
Musa, I absolutely love the way that you express challenge without going rogue. Because what's interesting to me, if you will, as I observe the world, is I think a lot of people say, if I challenge, I've already gone rogue. We're almost conditioned to think that way, which is not true.
Yeah, and unfortunately, maybe that's how everyone's heads are tuned, and that's not the case. And challenging and thinking is the fundamental right. I would like to say that.
Yeah. Yeah. That's very eloquently described, my friend. Very eloquently described. If I kind of add on to it, I think there's a few things that grab me, and especially I'll hone in on the question piece of it that you mentioned. Um, I think one thing that is extremely key, especially as we navigate the complexities of the world, is identifying the topic or the subject that you're dealing with, whatever it might be, right? That you're approaching. I think two is recognizing it is in a unique context, and every context is unique, if you will. So that's another aspect. And then the third piece of this, and I have to give credit in a minute to a few gentlemen, if you will, but I think it's extremely key to start with a bit of a blank page to form a point of view. Don't start coming in with a point of view, but really start with a blank page to form a point of view. This allows us to address and really kind of put our blind spots, right? Our preconceptions to the side. And if I go a little bit deeper, then we get to the question piece of it. As we begin to ask questions and shift perspectives as you're asking questions, right? Take somebody else's perspective, invite other people's perspective. And then as you get the answers that emerge in that conversation or that exploration, then we take those answers and we begin to formulate a point of view. So the blank page really formulates a point of view. The shifting set of perspectives give us the questions to drive forward. And it becomes a very, very natural process that we do. But in my observations, those are the deconstructed elements. Before I pause, I have to give credit to the blank page, if you will. It really has its origins in the work that I've done with Mark Ferraro and Brad Barton, two colleagues who I know I've mentioned their names to you historically that I've worked with. So I'd be quite remiss if I didn't mention their names in that blank page reference, or if you will, the blank page.
Wonderful, wonderful.
What are your thoughts, my friend, kind of in addition to the things I sort of threw in there?
Yeah, and then as you kind of said, the assumptions, all that stuff, and then understanding the context or the premise where you are, that drives what is right or what is wrong. So in any given situation, you will have some information and some facts that you are aware of, and then and some information that you are aware of by get-go, and some information you can be see in the room, or you can sense that. And with the context and the premise that you are dealing with, that you need to challenge, or one need to challenge their own assumptions, how they are processing the information. And that's where you bringing, and anyone bringing in the multiple perspectives come into picture, and then consider the options, which option is the best. So pretty much this is the same exercise, at least I can say in my personal experience, I go through in every aspect of my life. And I bring in all these aspects, understand the context or premise of where the situation is, and I challenge some of the assumptions based on the information I know and I don't know. And then I don't know, the information I don't know is more vital than what I don't know, and then figure out what are the conclusions or assertions I'm coming at, and how useful and not useful are those in that context.
Very well said. Very well said. I love the way you're describing it, because truly, if we are alive, it starts with critical thinking. And that sense of aliveness is quite often lost if we don't, if you will, critically think.
Right.
And I think this will play into our next conversation with deliberate practice, because if you critically think but don't deliberately practice, that sense of aliveness withers very, very openly in the same way.
Yeah, very true, very true. And at that point of time, yeah, I would like to quote one of the famous saying of Bob Marley, which says, "Set free yourself from mental slavery. None but ourselves can free our minds."
Well said.
So, though it is not directly related to the topic what we are talking about, thinking or critical thinking here, but it starts with us. It starts with our own thinking, how we see the surrounding, how we see the society, and the place we live in.
Very well said. Very well said. I'm going to add a few more things, if you will, if you don't mind. Notice you're kind of shifted a little bit.
Sure, please.
So, in the descriptions that we're talking, I look at it and say, well, curiosity is from what we've been describing, and to use the word that you and I have referenced as curiosity and creativity. Curiosity is the ability to ask questions, right? Derive answers, look at it from multiple shifting perspectives, right? Formulate a point of view. If I flip over to the creativity piece of this, I think the creativity piece of this has a very similar vantage point. And what I mean is that point of view that is formulated as you're curious, you take that point of view and you actually look at it from shifting perspectives. So you look at the point of view itself that you're forming, you look at it from different perspectives, and where insights really come isn't in what you see from a perspective, it's actually in how you connect the dots across perspectives. So there's a lot of power to being able to shift to multiple perspectives and then seeing where the dots connect from multiple perspectives. And then that provides insight that feeds back into, if you will, the curiosity piece of it, asking more questions, asking different questions. So it's a closed loop where curiosity feeds creativity and creativity feeds curiosity. And I'll add one other thing before, because I really, really want your vantage point on this again, or your perspective on this, is if people are unable to shift their perspective or take multiple perspectives, then it's difficult for them to be curious and it's difficult for them to be creative.
Yeah. Very, very well said, Sai. And that's where, you kind of said curiosity, creativity, and then vantage point gives multiple perspective, all that stuff. And if I need to put it into relate or to compare, I would call it as observe, orient, decide, and act. This is a common loop, and then most of the people in our industry or community uses this. So one can observe multiple perspectives only if a person is curious. And if you are not curious, if you want to operate the same way or the routine, then that person may see hardly one, two, or maybe three perspectives, not more than that. And in order to orient, you can orient only if you have multiple inputs or information available with you. If there is nothing much, then you don't need to have that orient phase at all, right? And then there is no decision making, and simply you observe and act, right? And if you don't observe multiple perspective, then directly it goes to act. So yeah, that's my viewpoint on what you explained with respect to creativity, curiosity, and then the vantage point of multiple perspectives.
Again, very well said. And the OODA loop from John Boyd, exactly to your point, is very much connected to creativity and curiosity in the way that we're describing it. So very, very, very powerful correlation.
Sorry to interrupt.
No, chime in. All good.
One of the facets of creative thinking is to compare and differentiate. So, and OODA loop is something, the way that you are explaining and talking about curiosity and creativity, OODA loop is something that struck me, and then I talked about it. And creative thinking is all about, with the information what you have, compare it, differentiate it, and figure that out.
Well said.
I want to call that out before we move on.
Most definitely. And exactly to your point, I think it is both the curiosity and the creativity piece that are, I'll say the underpinnings of the ability to differentiate, find out what's different, find out what's common, and then use those to feed the whole critical thinking process.
Absolutely.
So I want to throw out a few more other things, if that's okay, Mudasir, just to kind of for us to really look at. So what I have found, and I think we're deconstructing critical thinking, and we're beginning to see the elements very, very crucially, if you will. One thing that especially and we go back to the why of the complexity of the world and the way that we're navigating it, et cetera. I always encourage folks to really expose themselves to as many sort of perspectives or bodies of knowledge or bodies of experience that they can, because that allows them to achieve that shift, which is very crucial for the curiosity piece as well as the creativity piece. And when people don't expose themselves, then they almost become indoctrinated. And that's a shame, because we lose their talent individually, and we lose our talent collectively. Would love to hear your thoughts on kind of that sort of aspect of it.
Yeah, they say life is a school, right? So if someone say I got my education or I got my degree from college or school, then they don't have multiple perspectives. Yes, that is the core and basic route to gain the knowledge in life, but the multiple perspectives and being curious, exploring things in any phase, any situation of life you are in, regardless you are in a professional setup or in you are in a community or you are with a family, you need to be putting yourselves in other shoes, understanding their perspectives, and then only you can engage with other person much more meaningful way rather than at a surface level.
Yeah.
And if we don't understand where they are coming from, why they are saying and presenting whatever it is, then it would be very hard to understand the multiple perspectives.
Well said. Very well said. And I'm gonna ask actually I'm gonna put a reminder. I'm gonna put a reminder for you and I, if you will, if you don't mind, because you triggered something when you said school and life. In a different conversation, I would love for us to explore, if you will, or deconstruct in our
Mhm.
conversation Nietzsche's metaphor, and I'm going to share it, if you will, briefly here. The way we can set up another session. The metaphor, if you will, that I should rephrase that. The metamorphosis, I should say, the transformation
Mhm.
between, if you will, the camel, the lion, and the
Mhm.
child. And we should
Wow.
definitely set up a session in the future to explore that, because the school of life, if you will, as you just described it, is very, very powerful there from a transformation perspective.
Yeah. I could not agree more. Yes.
Excellent. Excellent. So my good friend, any sort of other things that we want to bring in from, or you'd like to bring in from a deconstructed vantage point before we kind of think about sort of some direct guidance that we can take out of the conversation?
Couple of things. Some people will say, I don't know what critical thinking is. I kind of understand what it is all about, but I struggle to get it into practice. And uh, I want to do it, but I cannot achieve it. So what guidance that you and I has to offer for such situations or such people?
Yep. Yep. So would you like, so I can offer a few thoughts, or would you like to start and offer a few thoughts relative to guidance and what have you?
Yeah, okay, I can go first, and the deliberate attention to the information that you have, and reading the room. They say reading the room is the crux of anything what you do, right? So awareness gives you to understand your surroundings, people, and behaviors, and eventually they will put forth some viewpoints or some facts, some information out there, and at the same time bringing in their perspective and where they are coming from, understanding their context and premise, and what and why they are saying what they are saying, and the preconceived notions, breaking the preconceived notions and some of the assumptions, challenging those assumptions is very, very key in this process. And and if one cannot challenge one's assumptions, then the ability to master critical thinking is going to lose, I would say that. And then once you challenge those assumptions, you will have options of assertions or conclusions you will have in your head, and then what is the best fit or win-win combination for both parties is something we can agree on. and
Yeah.
and that's kind of a flow chart I could provide to one how
Yeah.
to practice critical thinking very deliberately.
I think there's a lot of value in what you said. A few particular things I want to emphasize, so that the listeners and the audience, if you will, uh, doesn't lose them. I think one of the key words that you used is attention. So what you give attention to is one aspect, but also what grabs your attention is another aspect.
Hmm.
What takes your attention, if you will, because that
Right.
will help you kind of see different things. And I know you and I, when we've been together, right?
Hmm.
In order for us to shift our own attention factor, we will move around the room, literally.
Absolutely.
And
Hmm.
that can, and as odd as it may seem, it really allows you to observe different things. So
Mm-hmm.
the other thing which I want to emphasize, which I want to pull out of what you shared, we briefly mentioned challenging without going rogue, if you will. So as we like to say, challenge respectfully. If you challenge respectfully, then you can essentially balance. You haven't gone rogue. You've
Yeah.
challenged respectfully, and you haven't gone rogue.
Yeah. Challenging respectfully without gone rogue is asking for a discussion. Why this is, and then what is the rationale, or why is this the way it is?
Yeah,
So, and uh, at times, if I talk in a professional setup, a lot of top bosses will not have, or at least not, I will not say a lot, at least few top bosses will not encourage that kind of discussion, because they feel uh, if a person is, the person who is asking this or challenging this is lower in the order, they might not respect that. This will go back to in traditional ways of operating. Now fortunately the trend has been changing, and entire societies, entire industries are changing. Hope that continues and thrives. And that is where it's not just the person who is challenging by asking questions. The others need to be receptive and understand, and they also need to welcome those questions. Then only we can improvise or do something greater than what we have.
yeah, yeah. So this actually brings up another topic, which we should do another session on, quite honestly, because, and I want to call it out, if you will, very explicit. A lot of times we don't challenge because we have a fear that the tension, or that the conflict, not
Mhm.
aggression, just conflict, the tension, if you will break down, uh, will break down into destruction. So we don't
Mhm.
challenge out of fear that, right, the tension will break down
And
and
then
become
it
destructive.
very well resonates. It very well resonates with me. And then many people think I challenge a lot of stuff and I question a lot of stuff,
Yeah,
but I know I may be questioning only 30 to 40% what I'm thinking.
yeah.
So not necessarily it is a fear. Maybe I consider many factors, and then I only maybe put out one fourth of what I'm thinking or what I am seeing there.
Very well said. And it's not necessarily a fear that you have. It's a fear
Mhm.
of everybody in the room, essentially, everyone participating, because you may
Right.
not have a fear of it breaking down, but someone else will not engage because they have a fear of it
Absolutely.
breaking down. So it's
Mhm.
definitively not only the individual, but it's all of us collectively. So can I add a few points, if you will, then around
Yeah,
the
yeah, please go ahead.
effect of
Please go ahead. And
challenges.
then I said I sort of interrupted, and I don't want to
No,
lose
no,
that thought, so I chimed in. Go ahead.
no, no, please always interrupt. That's the beauty of the conversation, my good friend. Always, always. So I think there's a few things, especially that people can very practically now kind of really take away from this conversation. One is exactly as we're mentioning, ask questions with intent. Don't ask
Mhm.
questions. And I see this very, very often. People will bombard someone with questions, but they're not really formulating a point of view. So ask intentional, deliberate questions. And if you don't know what to ask, listen.
Mhm.
If you can't think of a question, just invite someone to talk. That's extremely crucial. So if you
Very,
can't ask
very,
a
very well
question,
said.
just listen. So,
Mhm. Mhm.
and to be very honest, Mauricio, and I've shared this with you, I mean, those are some of the key things that I picked up when we met. Is I respectfully saw you apply critical thinking, the way you listen, and you put this into practice, and that essentially almost naturally caused me to gravitate toward you.
I'm humbled for the kind words. Thank you.
You're very deserving of it. Let me put it that way, my good friend. So you're most welcome. So,
Right.
so
And then going back to asking questions with a deliberate intent, or make that point of view in that question, right? Not asking for the sake of asking. Not just a person who is asking a question, the receiver of the question, and then to make, not necessarily the receiver of the question may get why the question is asked, and from where it is getting asked. While asking a question, at times clarifying why you are asking, or
yeah,
from where, and from what is your thought process and why you are popping that question out, will help the person to see the perspective. If the other person is unable to see your perspective, where you are coming from or where you are thinking from, clarifying or giving additional information from from your point of view will help the questions receiver to address that question Very well.
And I think that's a key point that you're calling out, because it's how you ask a question. If you ask a question, if I said, oh, Mudasir, why is this X, Y, and Z? Okay, that's a very directed question. And I used your name, it becomes very directed at you.
Correct.
Versus Mudasir, I would love to have your thinking about this particular topic. The shift there becomes on the topic, right? And an invitation. Absolutely. So if a question is an invitation, it's radically different experience that we have.
And then when you call out someone's name and ask a question, and people try to give a textbook response that is universally accepted or politically correct, and when you invite them, what do you feel? What is your opinion? Then you may end up getting altogether different, if not various sorts of perspectives from that person.
Well said again. Well said again. I'm gonna offer another practical tip, if you will, for folks. And this goes back to really, as we said, embracing multiple perspectives. I always encourage folks, expose yourself to different bodies of knowledge and different bodies of experience. Expose yourself to people, if you will, as you encounter them. Because that will give you the ability to shift perspectives. That will give you the ability to, as you shift perspective, connect the dots, like we said, from a creativity vantage point. So I encourage folks, and I think for those that know me, I love to read. And I love to read, not just for the reading, but putting it into practice. But I always encourage folks, start a new book every month. And it doesn't mean you have to finish it. Just start it to flip through it, right? To expose yourself to something.
Right. Yeah, and well said, and great advice. And then I am not an avid reader of books like you. And then what I would do is, wherever I go, it can be mall, movies, or maybe a vacation spots, I read the people. I tend to read the people. It can be business places. And that way, I kind of gather or accumulate various behaviors, cultures, and I will try to adopt myself to be one among them where I am in. And as the saying goes, be a Roman in the room. So, that's what I kind of picked on since my early days.
Beautiful. So definitively, it doesn't have to be read a book. Expose yourself to new experiences, and just expose yourself within reason. I'll put it that way, so you don't jeopardize yourself or anyone else. But expose yourself to new experiences. Try, forgive me, I don't remember who said the quote. Do something every day that scares you, and gets you out of your comfort. I can't remember the quote or what have you, but definitively an aspect.
Yeah, maybe to feel the adrenaline rush. I don't know.
There you go. So I have one other thing I want to throw out there from a practical tip. I don't know if you have something.
Yeah, please go ahead.
I think, and I know I think you already hinted at this, but I really, really would love folks to embrace this, because I think it is something that really fuels you and I, as we've experienced each other. Challenge your assumptions. Challenge your assumptions. Challenge your dependencies. Challenge your constraints. What assumptions are we making? Make a decision and then ask yourself, what assumption am I making after you made the decision, not before? And then also, okay, well, based on that decision and the assumptions I've made, what am I dependent on that kind of almost forced me down that path? And then how am I constrained that I got forced down that path? So really questioning ourselves after a decision is made, but perhaps not acted on, back to Uda, can be very, very powerful.
Right. Yeah, and that's a great insight. Thank you, Sai.
You're likewise, my good friend. Likewise. So, I think this has been a very interesting conversation. I think we've deconstructed, reconstructed, offered some guidance. I hope you agree, Mudasir.
Yeah, I hope our conversation will be helpful for a few of the audience or the people who is going to watch in future, and then hope they will have one or two takeaways from our conversation.
Most definitely. And by all means, we've got more topics that we're going to get into, and I'll extend an invitation to the community. We're learning together. If there are people that would love to participate in this kind of conversation, I think you and I would definitively welcome them into the room here.
Yeah, most certainly. Yeah, and this is all as you already mentioned at the beginning, and this is the practical experience what we felt or experienced, and there is no right or wrong, or there is no one take or the other take here. So it's our experience, how we and I felt about a given topic. So
Yeah.
feel free to agree, disagree, and then share your comments about this conversation.
Very well said. Agree or disagree, it's we're learning together, and I think you emphasized it. And shame on me, I'll put it that way, for not emphasizing it in the beginning. This is
No,
definitively
no,
not. This is
no,
definitively
go ahead,
not.
go ahead.
This is definitively not theory, if you will. We are talking extremely. I mean, these are learnings from practice,
Right.
and we formulate very much so a point of view, and we continue to learn together. So I want to add one last thing before we sign off.
Sure, go ahead.
This conversation itself is an exercise in critical thinking. So this is almost a meta-critical thinking conversation. If you think about what we did,
Right.
we pretty much put everything we've talked about into practice here.
Yes. And it was great conversing with you, Sai, on this topic, especially in our inaugural series of Deconstructed, and looking forward for many more.
Likewise, my friend. Thank you, Mudasir. Thank you to all who've joined us, and thank you to all who will listen to the recording. And until next time,
Thank you.
thank you.